My name is Derrick Weyrauch. I'm the president and CEO of Palladium One Mining. Palladium One is an exploration stage company focused on green transportation metals, and specifically nickel, copper, and PGEs.
Good to see you. Good to
see you.
We had a good session on the PGE side of things. So I'm going to stay away from that today. I want to focus on what's hot, and that's copper and nickel. Tyko project continues to delight, but you've had to raise some money. Why?
Well, simply we want to keep exploring. We've had tremendous success this year with the drill program that got started in the summer. We recently announced another discovery on the property, 20 kilometers away from the original discovery. And we're really looking at it as a nickel district at this point with the number of showings that we have and the grades that we are seeing. And we raised money specifically for exploration at Tyko last December, and that'll be largely consumed by the end of this month. So we're reloading to keep the program going. The offering that we announced this week is a $3 million offering that is brokered and $1 million that is not brokered.
Okay, I mean it's kind of frustrating. Markets are doing what they're doing. It's tax loss season, we understand that, but depressed environment. Do you need this much money? Would you have taken more under better circumstances? I mean, I'm more interested in what do you need to do with this money to kind of get the market excited again? I guess is the question.
Yeah, no, I think the issue that we're trying to deal with is minimizing the dilution to shareholders. And for those that are familiar with the concept of flow-through financing in Canada and the fact that Tyko is located in Canada, we're availing ourselves of the Canadian tax scheme, which allows subscribers to deduct their subscription cost from their income taxes. So anybody subscribing and would close the financing this year get a tax deduction, and therefore their after-tax cost is much lower. Now, what we've done here is we've constructed a financing so that offshore parties can take the back end of what's commonly referred to as a charity flow-through financing. Now, for all this money that we're raising this month, it needs to legally be invested into the projects in Canada by the end of next year. And given there's always uncertainty with regards to permitting, we're still waiting for 2 permits related to our Tyko project. There's only so much you want to take. You want to be prudent. So while our share price at the time of announcement was a little over 13 cents per share, the front-end financing is 20 cents. So we're minimizing dilution, getting enough money where we think we're being prudent.
Okay, let's talk about what you've got there. Okay, so we obviously the kind of copper sulphide and the nickel component is what I think is engendering the interest in it. I mean, I think you recently announced like plus 10% nickel, but it was over a sort of short interval. So I've got to ask a question. It's like how do you come at this to kind of show the kind of scale and the amount of contained metals here, is going to be super, super interesting going forward.
Yeah, we have to step back a second and realize that this particular property and area of the province hasn't even been mapped by the government. All the information that is being developed is our information. And, unlike going into other areas of the province or even in Finland where you've got a tremendous institutional database of knowledge. So what we're doing is we're going after the low-hanging fruit first. And we're following a very prescriptive program whereby we start off trying to identify electromagnetic anomalies where you get these conductive rock units, which would tend to host the sulphide mineralization and the nickel copper that we're looking for. We follow that up with ground-based geophysics, soil sampling, and then we do drilling. But, we're very much at the early stage trying to find those zones where we have mineralization, and we're looking at the larger conductors first. But as part of that process, and we've talked about it over the last couple of months as the geological model is evolving, we've identified what we believe to be, let's call it swarms, if you will, of east-west trending feeder dikes or pathways of mineralization that's also referred to in the nickel space as conoliths. And all the intercepts that we're getting and where we're focusing it is the anomaly, or are the anomalies on these systems. And it's great, for example, at West Pickle, we've got the discovery, but we need to step out and keep drilling. And what we're really looking for is the mafic and ultramafic rocks that came from the magma flow, which would tend to host the mineralization. But you really don't know how it's porpoising through the country, right, or through the host rocks. So the easy bit is to chase what's showing up on the geophysics and drill those first, but then you have to start stepping out and looking for perhaps what was too deep for the geophysics to see, and try and follow and build an endowment. So we're right at the stage of let's just find where we've got something to start with, and then we're going to build from it and try and build out the tonnage.
Right. Okay. Because I think that's a bit that's kind of people are looking to you for, is to say, right, in terms of our model, our hypothesis about how we find this. I appreciate what you just said, but you got to kind of quickly move through the phases and say that this is going to be of scale. And, when I look at other nickel sulphide projects, they don't require too much drilling before they kind of come out with resource numbers, it seems. So for you, with these kind of sulfides, what's the intent in terms of the amount of drilling, the depth of drilling that you're going to be putting out?
Well, first of all, if you have to recognize the fact we've got a huge property, it's 25,000 hectares in size, so you can't go drill the whole darn thing. You got to pick your spots, and we've got 2 spots right now, which is Smoke Lake and West Pickle, quite far apart. We've now put in about 6,000 meters of drilling into West Pickle to try and understand the pathways of the mineralization and build out the massive sulfides that we've been showing in the most recent press releases with these spectacular grades. But we will continue to focus in that area in order to build out a larger endowment and tonnage. So I think you should expect us to zoom into a few areas now that we've got a bit of a handle on some of these areas, and try and build up to a resource status, while we're also going to be continue to do more regional exploration. So as we move into next year, even though this year we'll be drilling circa 12 to 13,000 meters before Christmas, next year we want to continue drilling, but we're going to come back and using the information we have, do some additional geophysics to try and continue to identify the pathways that were not detected previously.
Interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. The bit that kind of doesn't make sense is obviously the market. People are trying to. It's a really hard read at the moment. They say it's tax loss season. People are got a lot of things on their mind, but how quickly do you feel, timing's everything, right? So how quickly do you deploy, when do you deploy this capital? Because people are putting out results. I mean, you yourself put out a great result. You're talking about 10.4% nickel, 3.4% copper. That would normally, in a normal environment, create a lot of excitement, but it kind of got that old, shoulder shrug, which everyone is suffering from at the moment. So do you think it's the case of a bit more planning at the front end of 2023 and then, deploy the capital laterally once you sort of understand what the markets are doing, or do you have to quietly, cautiously kind of just get on with it?
Well, I think the market to some degree for the last little while has recognized the fact, as you pointed out earlier, that the intercepts, they're not hugely wide where we're getting these spectacular grades, 2.3 meters in width. It's certainly a very mineable width, but what they're looking for is greater endowment. If this thing is hundreds of meters wide and hundreds of meters long, you're going to build more tonnage very, very quickly. So they're waiting to see, okay, you found some spectacular grades, you've got mineable widths, but how big can this be? And that's really what our focus is now, to try and grow it. But we need to stick to our knitting, and we can't just willy-nilly drill the entire project because you're going to waste a lot of money. So you got to go through the steps. And we now have a bunch of information that we've generated on the back of a number of soil programs, geophysical programs, downhole borehole EM, where we're trying to, in three-dimensional space, model what that mineralized zone may look like and where it is, so we can subsequently drill it. And we'll be continuing that process next year. So you should expect to see us next year doing additional magnetic surveys, for example, additional borehole EM surveys to try and do that modeling. And one of the things that we haven't talked about, because quite honestly, getting spectacular drill results is it's quite exciting, and people tend to respond to it very quickly. But if we look at the context of West Pickle, about 2.7 kilometers to its east is a zone called RJ. We have a historical hole in that from 2016 that had over 16 meters, over 16 meters, 1% nickel, 0.7% copper, a very nice hole. And that's what we've been focused in on, looking at the grade. But around that is 85 meters, or rather that's inside of 85 meters of mafic, ultramafic rock that was carrying mineralization as well. So there's obviously some tonnage opportunity there. And we believe it's the extension of West Pickle. Now, if you think of a garden hose going through the earth, we think that West Pickle is, close to the surface. RJ, again, close to the surface. Well, what's in between along this 2.7 kilometers? Did it porpoise down? So we'll be looking for that connector that we think is there as we move forward to help build that narrative of not only do we have spectacularly high grade, we're now building a larger endowment.
Okay. So you're clear about what you need to do and the timing for that. And I think I guess my opinion of this project hasn't really changed. So it feels like it's in good hands. It's good, it's a good asset, but you've got to work out what it is that you've got there, because where you're located and the sorts of grades that you're pumping out is a good start. Just get that scale component going and get a resource out there. It kind of puts a stake in the sand, or a flag in the sand for people to go, okay, I can see how this thing advances. Now, to do that, you've obviously just raised some capital. Do you think that, that's enough for what, the next drill season, or is that for the next year?
Well, the financing hasn't closed yet. We just announced it this week, so we have to go through the process of closing it. We hope to get it closed before Christmas of this year.
Right.
And that is based on how much we think we need for the initial, or rather the next round of activity that we want to do next year at Tyko. We've also, as part of that, are including a little bit of money for our Canalask project up in the Yukon that we acquired earlier this year, which is also a high-grade massive sulphide opportunity, but a very small portion of the proceeds are for that at this stage. We want to keep the focus in on Tyko as we move forward.
Right. Okay. Well, it's the kind of bane of explorers. They raise money, assess, drill, raise money, assess, drill. And I'm glad that you're not going to get distracted by Canalask, but obviously it potentially has a lot of potential. But coming back to the question on the money, I'm assuming you raise it. 4 million gets you through next year, or does it get you through right? 12 months?
I think what we know right now, 4 million gets us through next year. All the activities that we want to undertake, and a large part of that activity is going to be a slower spend rate, because we don't anticipate drilling as much as we have done this year. We're going to be spending more time doing soils mapping, etc., in the field to help better understand the property.
Right, and which I think for most retailers it sounds really, really boring, but it is really, really essential. So how much heavy lifting do you think that the copper and the nickel price are going to do for you in 2023?
Well, nickel has performed extremely well. There's all sorts of concerns in the market with regards to it. You just look at what's happened over since the beginning of November. Both copper and nickel have done well, and I think certainly on the nickel side and PG side as well, it plays into the narrative of what's going on in Russia, and potential reduction in supply of the materials, because Russia is a major supplier of sulphide nickel, which is what's used in the EV, or the hybrid EV as well as a major supplier of PGE. So I think, because of the security risk associated from the supply out of Russia, which accounts for roughly 40%, and also to some degree for the PGEs from South Africa, there's concern. So I think there's going to be ongoing support for the price of the commodities, especially as we do the energy transition to the EV and the hybrid. And in the backdrop, we also have to understand that the globe is growing its population. We just about a month ago, it was the news that we hit 8 billion people. If 8 billion people there want to have a Western lifestyle, it's going to take copper wiring for the homes. It's going to take steel. It's going to, you got to feed these people as well. So fundamentally, from a commodity complex perspective, I'm extremely bullish, and I think that some of the flavor of the month investing that we've seen over the last couple of years for the fast money is looking at the commodity complex and saying, maybe we got to go back there because the fundamentals are just so compelling. So I think that it'll turn, but we've got a lot of volatility in the market, a lot of angst and uncertainty with how things roll out, China as well as in the U.S. And it's just going to be wait and see, and we need to stick to our knitting, and as you point out, grow our endowment.
If I look back, just final question is, if you're looking back, I'm assuming you're going to raise your money by the end of this year, right? And assuming you do, if you look back over this year, would it be fair to ask you to give yourself a mark out of 10? Because there's been so much that's been out of the control of companies this year. It's felt sort of like quite a strange year. But if you were to say, for the bits that you were in control of, are you happy with what you've done?
Yeah, I think we're quite pleased with the progress we've made on the projects and the direction we've gone. Obviously our shareholders are not going to be that happy because our share price is lower now than it was at the beginning of the year. But it is what it is. That's not something I have 100% control of. But in terms of executing plans, having additional discoveries, adding value to the company with the capital we have, I think our team has done a very good job with that.
Okay. Well, look, good luck with the race. Stay in touch. I'm intrigued with what's happening at Tyko. So we will speak to you soon.
Well, thank you very much for your time once again. Talk soon.